Record,
Yep.
please.
Should be recording now.
Right. So, yeah. So we've got a session today with only about 8 slides, from what I can see. Thank you, Stephen. But actually, some really crunchy stuff to get through. And as I was just saying, we're getting to the pointy end now of the options narrowing down. So I'll hand over to yourself, and I think we'll also hear from Richard following that. So. Let's get underway. Sorry, okay. I should say we are recording again, and if you'd like to ask questions along the way by way of chat, please do so, and I'll come back to the questions in the order that they were submitted on the chat at the end of it. Stephen.
Okay, I'll share my screen now. Oops. Share. Have I had any success with sharing my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Would you like me to share mine?
Have I think I'm okay now. This is working.
Yes, we can see it now.
Yep. Oh, cool. Okay, yes, thanks, Councillor Beck. You're right, there's going to be several speakers today, and we'll just sort of get through this quite quickly, I think. My part anyway, what I need to just cover is just the multi-criteria, the draft multi-criteria analysis workshop that we did just to prepare a document to distribute, and something that we can add to. It's just the bones of something that the technical team got together, and it just to make it robust. It'd be great to get workshopping on it and get it finalised. I was just going to cover how the MCA fits into the wider narrowing down to the best practical option. The MCA in itself doesn't determine it. There's different lenses that we need to go through, but this is a big part of the investigations we've done, and it'll be great in time to get at least maybe 2 or 3 or 4 options that we can actually go forward with and look at it in a deeper manner. I've just got some broad observations to cover as well. So here we are. So for the March meeting, in action was to distribute the draft multi-criteria analysis document, which we did, which I did on late April. Yeah, again, it's just a starting point. It just provides ability for questioning, editing, and just having that feedback from, or just workshopping with Raglan reps. So that's what we have talked about coming into this meeting. Really great. We've talked about it several times, but it would be really great to just start the more face-to-face question and answer sessions, or just coming out, and we're proposing to do something very soon. If we were, and this is something we've got to think about internally, me alongside Carol and Ian and Richard, with the end of May, that the last week of May be a good time to tee this off. We could get a date distributed with plenty of time and send invites out, and we can really make it worthwhile. Again, it's sort of it takes a bit of energy, and it's a hefty document. There's a lot in there, but it's okay. It's readable, and it could be a case of, yep, we get where where and why the scoring is what it is, or we think, no, this is rubbish. Local knowledge says this, and we can change it in a manner that sort of becomes a document that represents everyone, if it's possible. So that's my question now. Is this something that we can do or should do? Maybe time to have a think about it, but I think it would be good. So I'll just carry on to the best practical option consideration. Maybe we can just think about that later on in the session. Should we get that meeting together by the end of May?
Yep, and it would be good feedback from like John, and whether we reach out to Chris and a few others just to check if that's what they want us to do. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so again, I think I highlighted it just quite quickly. The MCA is just a lens to be applied over the shortlist. We've come up like the 46 options, theoretical. Some we're just non-starters. Drill down to we've got 7 shortlisted options now that we've been digested and talking about for many months now. It's a chance to narrow these down. Additional lenses are going to be our affordability and adherence to the project objectives, and also the statutory partnership and responsibility toward Māori. It comes down to yeah, my last statement, narrowing down the shortlisted options is a project goal, and you must. I guess the question I'd ask is, what Trumps want? Does it just, we can do all this and then what's the point? It just comes down to affordability. It's not. It's just a process we're in now. It's just a process of looking at it, and if we can't, and if there's a clear winner, then it's golden. It makes life a lot easier. Nothing's ever that easy. It's just time for discussion, engagement, and see if we can get somewhere in a short amount of time to get an application that we can actually lodge with WRC. So again, just sticking to the multi-criteria analysis that we undertook just to get a document together, and I've just put some observations myself, and just as a discussion starter, and keen to just go through the sort of the 3 blobs that I identified and the reasons, and just a couple of quick seconds about the reasons for the why they're in the blobs. There's the blobs I'm talking about is the most favourable under the MCA, a mid-range sort of here or there, and a definite outlier of an option that really to me looks like a dead duck. So with our, this is an unweighted study at the moment. It's draft and unweighted, and there's ability to add weighting to it, like for instance give emphasis to the cultural, the environmental, the public health. That would be the traditional way to do it. It wouldn't really do too much, I don't think, just from looking at it, other than just sort of make more extreme the differences that I've already shown below. So the option that scored the highest under the multi-criteria analysis was the 100% private land with winter storage. The category that really that lifted it to this ranking, I can say that there was the cultural was part of that. Again, when you go through the document, there was an ability for the technical specialists to score culturally in depth, but just we're able to just so it's grayed out, but we're able to just check in with Tainui who are engaging with primarily for this, and just say, yep, we just to make sure that it gets representation, we just can do broad brush scoring, low, medium, or high, and that's what's put into the scoring matrix for cultural. Is the option likely to meet the levels of resistance on cultural grounds? The solution recognises and goes some way to addressing cultural concerns. That would be a mid score. A high score, the solution expected to meet cultural aspirations for the activity. So it's undoubtedly the 100% to land would be the most favoured in terms of the cultural assessment. A part system with a winter outflow will go half the way, so that meet mid, and the marine options would be the lower, so it would be very low. So that's what influenced that ranking. Public health, again, it was this is what we covered last in the March meeting. This is the work that was done with the QMRA, or the quantitative microbial risk analysis, alongside the harbour modelling. Again, we're talking here about the limit that the unit that's used for that study, it's no observable effects limit. So the scoring criteria for, I've got it as low would be public health risk is greater than no observable effect. That doesn't accompany any option. So it's for just mid and high that you can really be scored here. It's the public health risk is less than the no observable environmental effect, although some health risks remain. And it goes to the high, which there's the public health risk is much less than the no observable environmental level. It's a mouthful, but again, it's sort of with 100% to land, we don't have any discharge to water, so that has to score the maximum 10, and then it differs down to 4, which would be, and the freshwater option got that lowest ranking. Again, so the top 3, there was also it's sort of the criteria that raised that above was the benefits and opportunities ranking, which is again, so with 100% to land, you can say that's 100% reuse of the product. That's for plants, and it's stored over winter, and in summer that the stored treated wastewater is applied to ground again. Again, with the part or the summer utilization. In summer, it's easy to use water. It's easy to use water for reuse. Grass is a great scavenger of it. Crops also, and there will be no issue with that. It's just the winter side of things, and where storage becomes non-feasible, gets a medium score, and the marine options which don't have a reuse component get 0, get nothing. So when I look at there's the medium blob, which may be I've said the mid-favored options, and then we get the least favored option, which is the MBR and the stream outfall. And this is after a lot of the ecological studies and the harbour modelling. This is a really, it won't be progress. It just won't, because it in terms of the lowest ranking, the social and community, it's sort of again, it's introducing a highly treated wastewater, but into areas that don't have any wastewater at the moment. That's an effect. It gets less. It's also, when we're thinking about the ecological effect, we know that the health of the streams, it's not optimum, but it's not a dead stream, and there's juvenile species in there. Adding anything to it, ammonium in particular, that's still a toxicant, and so it wouldn't meet the criteria of the freshwater policy statement, and so it's fatally flawed. It'd be great to just to at least get some agreement that one doesn't. It can be. We can go from 7 to 6 at least. Again, it'd be great to take 3 or 4 forward from here. Something to think about. So my last slide, basically, again, the MCA, it's done without consideration of cost. That's not the purpose of the MCA. Cost and affordability will come into it at some point. And again, it's sort of, there's a bit to read there, but I've just put the ranges and the LTP budget within there. Just when you're juggling it, you can see that there's 3 areas as well. I guess there's those that are affordable in terms of the lower end and the LTP budget. Again, and then in terms of the MCA, those also get a lower ranking. We look at the L2, the 100% to land, and again, it's sort of the cost that we've got here. It just sort of does keep it in check, and to me, it really does cause a red flag. And again, is it really consentable? I guess commissioners and councils are aware of the risks and the bad examples that happen. I'm thinking about have a Google of Mangawai and the challenges with the Kaipara District Council. It sent them bankrupt in terms of having a consent for land purchase, which just it spiraled out of control. Again, even with the other options, it is outside the budget in terms of the low range, but it gives us something to work with in terms of the project team to get that within a workable budget, or just some outside thinking. Okay, so I think I'm on track for 10 minutes. I'm going to let Richard talk through things. And Richard, you just give me a indication when you want me to change slides.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Okay, in the last meeting we talked about our trip to Paranui and how we'd been looking at a new option, a new land option. This is option L1, and it is one which looks like it's in our budget range. What it basically involved was looking at public land, and before I discuss the blocks of land we're looking at, we'll talk briefly about how what's proposed is a low dripper, a slow drip infiltration system where we eject the treated wastewater 300 millimeters below, and you see the diagram there that at an upper level we treat the put the effluent is pumped through the fields, and this is the area we're looking at is down by the airstrip where we've got the sandy thing, which is very, very similar to what we had at Paranui. At the same time, we when the water table gets too high or we're struggling to manage our groundwater tables, which would only happen a few times in winter, we would still have to look at having another layer of irrigation and a drainage field which we'd remove some of the effluent after it's passed through the ground, and we were looking at a new discharge at some point along the coastline. It might not be at the existing location, it could be further up by the airstrip area. So that is a key piece of land to sort of try and make this one work, is this sort of Paranui type slow dripper infiltration based around the airfield. But then we're going to as well, we've got a willing partner at the golf club to provide treated effluent up through there and irrigate their greens. So
No, the fairways, Richard.
The fairways, sorry, yep. Yeah, not the greens, yeah, the fairways. So we get quite a big area. This has been tried in other areas, and the golf club's well aware of that, and they're quite keen to participate in whatever we do. The other block of land is up in the Wainui Reserve area, and we've sort of identified areas which currently don't have high usage. So we've only just started to present this to the people who control this land, which is council, and there's pluses and minuses with using all of these. The airstrip, which I'll talk about first, even though it's second on that slide, has a very complex history, and we have to work around that with the stakeholders involved there. The sandy nature of it, though, has some appealing because we get this discharge, earth contact perspective, and generally we're not discharging any flows to the harbour. It would all go through the earth, and but in the winter time we'd still have to keep that option. So the Wainui Reserve, there's quite complex things around the Reserve Management Act to get that, and plus the reason and purpose that reserve was purchased. They're in the process of getting their reserve management plan processes underway, so any usage of the Wainui Reserve would take a lot of public consultation and working in with the plans which parks have for that. So it would probably be something which wouldn't, if we initiated the scheme, it wouldn't be immediately on as part of it. It would have to slowly be worked through if it was ever an option. But the Raglan golf course, they're a willing partner. They're actually very enthusiastic to sort of participate in this. And part of the scheme is that once we've got an example like Raglan, a golf club using it, we're hopeful that there'll be sort of other opportunities for the reuse of this resource within the community. So we had one meeting on this today with the management team at council, which Councillor Beach and Ian and Carol both all attended. We sort of got some support there, but it's probably better if, do you want to comment here, Ian, at all? Or Councillor Beach?
I'm happy to comment if you want. So the story, well, not the story, the discussion with the executive team today was around the critical nature of this resource consent with a desire to get it submitted in around July. The land application being an absolute must, it's doing it different, and it's critical to the success of the application. We talked about the risks, the environment court, and the reputational risks, and that we've been investigating these land application items, and we shared all these. We actually came up with 4 areas I'll come on to, but obviously it's complex. We talked about the technical issues with slope, soils, the seasonal nature of everything, the cultural issue, the one with the reserves, as Richard's alluded to, with the Wainui Reserve, what it was bought for and all that. So we've got quite a lot of complex things going on. What we see it from council's perspective is it's almost a 4-horse race to give us somewhere to put our treated wastewater effluent. How treated that wastewater effluent will depend on what land we get, because there's an ability for the land to accept a hydraulic load and a nutrient load. Yeah. So if we can get rid of the hydraulic load and the nutrient load, then we need a slightly lesser standard of treatment, which means it's a cheaper option. If we can't get rid of as much and we have to take more nutrient out of the plant, that ends up being more costly. And there's a dynamic kind of relationship between those two things. At the moment, the 4-horse race, as I've called it, is with regards to 4 land application spots. We've talked about the golf course, talked about the airfield. We've talked most recently about Papahua Sport Area, so where the football pitch is there, and then Wainui Reserve. We're exploring these with across the council. The slide you've got there allude to some of the issues with the airfield and Wainui. We've got to work through each of those, and what we will find is, out of the 4 horses that I've just mentioned in the 4 parcels of land, we will find a couple of winners, and that will give us a sustainable solution for the best practical option, which then we can roll into the consent. So we sought some support and engagement from the executive team, it's fair to say. It was fantastic in terms of the engagement from the exec team. They were really pleased with it. Gavin and Roger were actually have this afternoon gone and met with regards to the airfield. They went and met oh blimey, his name's escaped me, Heather, with regards to looking at more broader issues around the airfield. So that was certainly discussed. So that's really where we're at in terms of the land side of things. I don't know whether you want to go on to the next slide, and I'll just keep on talking while I'm on a roll. Thank you. So there are the numbers of the spend. Richard, do you want to say anything else, or am I good?
No, I think there was pretty well covered it, and it was good you picked up the 2 issues, the nutrient load and the hydraulic load. Yeah, because that is our problem with the other land applications, is the hydraulic load on when we don't have the option of these sandy sort of areas. We just don't get them anywhere else.
Yeah, we've got items to work through. Just thinking about another idea that came up was something about dockland, and was there an ability to go and utilize dockland and do some sort of have some discussion with them. So that came out of the discussions with the property team this week. So we're still sort of finding thoughts and ideas with regards to an innovative solution here, and that's the most important thing, is getting land out. In terms of dollars for the, sorry, yep. Just another one. I mean, there probably a few. We still have to. We've got to the point with our options now, with this last option, that we're going to instigate sort of discussions with Hugh's team at WRC about the sort of levels we are going to, each of the realistic options, what their requirements would be too. So that's starting to come into play as well. We didn't have a slide for that. And that's good, because that'll give us the boundaries by which we can play in terms of what we need to do ultimately with the discharge, isn't it? So that's good. So I think that meeting's tomorrow, isn't it? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's another piece of the puzzle. So just in terms of the dollars that we've got, you can see them all there in the staging of that. Okay, so that's 28 million there. So we've got to fit the solution into that. And ideally, keep ourselves out of the Environment Court and come up with a solution in this MCA and the workshop that we propose to deliver a BPO with a consent outside of the Environment Court. I guess that's our ultimate aim. So just looking at the proposed rates increases there, that's another side of this. We're talking financial practicality. And with these targeted rates increases, we are also looking at the debt caps in council. So we've also got to fund roads, parks and water. We've got a district-wide targeted rate. So it's unfair on the whole district to fund something with a higher level of service in a certain area. So to unfairly bias one of the townships that we serve with a U-Butte solution when others are paying for it. So there's some real, not just, well, it's moral issues here. I see the government help, Mr. Lawson. That's one of my next points. So you've read my mind there. The external funding from central government. We don't know what that looks like at the moment. We have a round of funding that we've already achieved to do some work around the district. Not forgetting that the funding we received couldn't be it could not have be applied to things that are in the LTP. So being that this is in the LTP, you could say this is a box inside of the LTP, and if we wanted to add another box of treatment or land app, then maybe we could find a bit of a grey area there. But at the end of the day, it's high risk to gain it. There's limited pot. We've got the money in the first 5 years of the LTP, so that is a significant amount of money. $28 million to deliver a plant is pretty significant. We start next year with all that spending, so yeah, that's good. We've got a fixed envelope fiscally, that's that one there, but we've got no guarantees on external funding, so that's risky. So I think let's play with what we know and let's aim to get it within this budget and be innovative around getting that land application. So just in terms of the final thing,
Ian, I might just talk to that as well, and we'll come back with a bit more discussion. But sitting on the governance side of it, and Lisa, you may have a view as well. But absolutely, things are changing in this space with the new waters regulator, Three Waters regulator, and we have had information that at the broadest level of principle, that if there is to be a transfer of assets through to the central regulator, then debts would also be transferred, and that potentially takes away some of those issues around debt caps and so on. Mm-hmm. But we are a long way away from any detail. So in terms of us acting responsibly on behalf of our community, we know we've got a consent to lodge before any legislation or detail is out. Mm-hmm. So we just have to do the best we can with the money we have. That'd be my view. Lisa, do you have a comment on that?
I don't really have more of a comment than what you've made, Axel, other than I support what you've said. We're in an interesting space, and we find, with what we have here is great work. A lot has gone into, the last 18 months, and it's, moving forward. I think we've got some really good options, but it's really complicated, given the legislative place that we find ourselves in a local space. So that's what I'd like to add, actually.
Thank you. Ian, one more point.
Yeah, absolutely, take that on board. And I think so. Now we're now looking at the next stage, as Councillor Beck said at the start. We are at the pointy end. We are getting towards the work where we need to start choosing the final options. We go from 6 to 2 potentially. We'd like a date to meet with the community and engage with regards to sharing the information we've got to. We've had these public meetings. Again, I mean, tonight there's 2 people on from the public, which is a bit of a shame. Hopefully people will be watching this recorded in the future, but we really do need to get this to the best practical option choices so that we can get the consent application lodged soonest, so that we can keep up the momentum to get this done. Because as soon as we know, the sooner we can start the build and such like. So seeking feedback on what's the most effective methods to share the information and engage with the community with regards to the selecting and of those options. Good segue.
So I think at this point we've got a few questions and comments from John along the way, which we might turn our minds to. But perhaps if we just stick with this this topic around how do we get a wider input and setting a date. Sorry, Ian, are you?
Yeah, I'll stop because I was going to say I'll answer a couple of the questions, but.
Yeah, yes, I was just going to say perhaps if we address that first, because there's no doubt that in getting from 6 to 2, we will want good engagement and not just in fact our usual attendees, but even beyond that, we'd want a wider community input into that if at all possible. So I guess I'm thinking, and Carol and Crystal, perhaps between you've already given some thoughts to this, but I'm guessing it's probably an in-person session, is it? Locally in Raglan?
Oh, it'd be good to get feedback actually from this group, but we did think about the fact that if we were going to do an in-person session, it's probably better to be a properly advertised sort of presentation type session rather than just drop in and invitations sort of sent out. I get the impression that the previous experience with drop-ins has been pretty patchy, whereas potentially maybe if we've got a sort of a complete story to tell to bring everybody up to speed, then a sort of a public meeting with invitations going out to known people who might be interested, but also generally out to the community. I don't know whether we'd need to do 1 or 2 of those. What does this group feel?
Can I make? I'd say 1 potentially, please, if possible, because we've done quite a lot of engagement. The other thing is I would tack it on to the Raglan Community Board meeting, so that there's already 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people there. So, and they're the people appointed by the community, and we just either ask to have it before or after, and put a couple of hours investment, maybe have it partially drop in and then move into a full meeting or something like that. So we give a blended, really just dedicate a day to being out there maybe, and just saying, this is it. And maybe there's some focus groups, maybe a few people to do some voting in focus groups, then there's a drop-in session, then there's the final board presentation, or I don't know, but maybe we just write off a day and just say, this is it, advertise it heavily, and really literally bring it to a head. I don't know.
I wonder too whether, and Stephen, I guess some of this, well, most of this would probably fall to you, but rather than coming along and having someone who's engaging for the very first time at that session, and then wanting to relitigate options that have been lost along the way, I wonder whether there's a sort of the journey that got us to these 6 options type half-hour Zoom, half-hour recorded thing that we could have available, and people could watch prior to coming rather than at the session.
Or a funky video.
Yeah, well, that's
video
right.
saying this is that. Yeah, exactly. Just really punchy. This is what we've done. We've looked at this. We've looked at this. I think that would be very cool and quite innovative as well.
So can I just ask a question, because I've only come in and out really sporadically, and I have an understanding of what we're doing. So if you're going out into the wider community, and we know what we know in the echo chamber that we're sitting in, how do we know that people understand what we've done? So if we're going out and we just make the assumption that this has been widely spread, can only think about, for example, the airfield with you know, safety restrictions that we've just recently floated with the community and stuff like that. Do we know that the community actually, in general, understand the complexities of how we got to where we are now? And I think I like that idea, Axel, around being able to tell a story in a short space of time so people can see it before they actually come and engage with an open day or an open session, or even you know, with the community board, because this is quite massive. So I just want to ask that.
Okay.
Yep, I'm going to have a quick talk. Yeah, there's definitely there wasn't really an opportunity to do that before now. Again, we were still going through the technical studies and at least trying to get to a point where we can actually say this is to give things a reality check. Like even like the talent options that exist, it's theoretical. There's, you know, buying farms. there's no land and things like that. We're finally getting to a point where we can sort of say this is something that could work in terms of the airfield. That isn't even a solid at the moment anyway. There's two partners here. This is council and Hapu. There's still a lot of discussion to be had. If that falls over, that's fine, but then still the principle of utilizing public land is okay. We'll just work with what is available, and these are the sorts of things that can be produced quite easily, I think, through a recording or even just something to distribute. And again, people can talk to me at all, but it's sort of, again, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because John's been great just hanging in there, but it's been and people that have just got their day jobs and coming to at night, I wouldn't want to hang around and listen to this either. There's a big story to tell, and it's just trying to do it effectively. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that we have the right people to think about the methods to do it, in terms of having Carol and Crystal and myself to develop something.
But Lisa, I think you're right. I think it would be very difficult for some of the community to really, unless they'd been following these sessions all the time, I think it'd be very difficult for the community to be up to speed about the journey that's been taken. So yes, we've got to tell the story in several ways. So one of the things is that we've got to actually update the website page with a much more easily digestible story. We've also got to be, before we do anything else, because we don't want to drive people to the website to have a look until we've done that. And potentially we could do some things on social media about that to sort of suggest people could go and have a look at that. And if we could do some sort of video, as has been suggested, to try and tell that story in a very short form, because that's an appealing way of being able to do it. That I think we've got two ways of doing it. So we sort of have one where people who just prefer just to read a short story can read something on the website, but we've also possibly got some sort of video about it, an appealing short video, and yes, we'd need to get those up before we actually invited anybody in for a sort of maybe a slightly, I don't like to say heavier session, but a more of a public meeting / drop-in, to actually hear it from the horse's mouth face to face, have an ability to ask questions at that point. But it's not, you're not going to have the opportunity to go into all the technical detail, but all the technical details that you've been going through in these sessions. But for the most part, a lot of people will not want to go into all those technical details. They want to be able to sort of understand the concepts without having to fully understand all the technical details. And I think the main thing is to be able to tell a story that people can then trust, that yes, they've spent this much time going through it, they've looked at all of those options, they've shortlisted 46 down to 7, they've now done another session looking at those, they've looked at them with all sorts of different lenses, and now they're telling us that these are the two options that we're now looking at, or this is the one option that we're now looking at to take forward, and we're really trying to explain to you, everyone, how we've got here and why we've got here. And it's finding methods of doing that and bringing people up to speed with it. We're not going to get to everybody. I think we often kid ourselves with how many people actually watch social media avidly, or read every newspaper or listen to every radio session avidly, but we can do our best to do so.
Yeah, I think, okay, so we're not trying to design a complete strategy tonight. Obviously, we'll leave you and Carol to work on that. I do think that we don't need to go. You're right. Your central point is correct. We don't actually need all of Raglan to engage, because it's the people who are going to want to engage and will have a strong and probably passionately held view will want the detail. They will naturally be at that more technical, detail heavy end. Otherwise, they just won't engage at all. And if they do, it'll be at a level where they probably won't have the technical detail to make a useful contribution in that wider sense. It'll be at a much more high level. That'll be my view. But I think we'll leave that with the two of you. What is most definitely right is we can't be talking to 2 or 3 or 5 people. We do need to get a much wider group. So we'll leave that with you, but I think we're all agreeing that we should have an in-person session of some hours, possibly attached to a community board meeting. Lisa, would you happen to have the dates for Raglan in front of you? Unmute, please.
Yep, I can send those to you, Axel, if you like, or do you need to know them now?
Would you have them now? And we might just be able to progress that.
You can go on to something else while I'm looking at
Okay,
that.
I'll do that. All right. Ian, would you like to address some of John's questions? Or Ian and Stephen?
Do you want me to talk about the high winter flows, Steve?
I haven't. Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah, you stopped sharing
no,
that.
Okay,
I stopped you sharing when you ignored my my private message.
Okay, I was daydreaming. That
John's got it. I'll hit up the first one, Steve, on the high winter flows. I think we did address this to some extent. At one of our sessions where we'd done an assessment of what's actually arriving at the plant as far as peaking of wet weather flows and things, and we pretty much found it was standard. But at that time, I told you that we were upgrading our network model, which obviously is divided into different what we call subcatchments. And we haven't got there yet, John, but at the moment that model's being calibrated. And once we've got a calibration, we'll be able to tell you the sort of percentage ingress of wet weather into our wastewater network. And we will, the way we do it is then we identify the ones which are the worst ones. You always go for the low fruit, and Watercare does have quite a good model of what you can achieve as far as a certain leakiness of catchments, because they've got multiple experience in treating catchments for I&I. So some of them, you always in a wastewater network, unfortunately, there are cracks and little points where water always gets in. So you're always going to get some wet weather ingress. But once we've got the modelling, we'll identify what the bad catchments are, and if they're at a level which is worth going in and doing a more intense sort of leak detection surveys. What we do currently with all our wastewater network pipes is we CCTV them on a 5-year cycle. WDC probably does a far better job than they do in Auckland as far as that goes, and we've got some which we've identified as poor in Raglan for this year's contract, and they're in there to get rehabilitated or replaced. I'll pass over to you, Steve. You've the composting toilet question.
Can you just read out the question? I
You can
see it on my screen.
press chat, and you'll get them on the side of the screen.
Okay. Where is it? Composting toilets. Still no progress on composting toilet and grey water. Yeah, so that yeah, okay, then Richard will give me a day off to actually finish my paper. I can give you the bullet points now. I guess that in terms of grey water, I think people can remember yonks ago, maybe in batches and stuff, that grey water used to that would just run and people would play in it and it would just go to ground. But in terms of the fecal matter, there has been some studies about it. Grey water from showers and baths, etc., with babies, there still is it's still not clean water. There's hairs, there's bugs, and it doesn't have the actual carbon. It doesn't have the carbon or the BOD time, retention time to treat that. So, from a Western engineering perspective, distribution of grey water would have to be from very benign sources, and it should and really the best method is to go to a centralized system. But I will finish that paper because I need to.
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry. With regard to us driving towards this solution, this is a municipal treatment solution, and we need to focus on it. Could we have permission from maybe John that we're not going down a composting toilets idea? With grey water, we probably need to put to bed. The best way to treat the wastewater is to take it into centralised place, which we're doing, and actually the reuse of that water in an irrigation type scenario is actually the best thing we can do at a sizable level that allows for the efficiencies to be gained, such that we can just say grey water, it doesn't really stack up, and composting toilets don't really stack up. That's not the subjects we're dealing with here. So if we could get Stephen's time, with your permission, John, and community, to say, actually, Steve, just keep on focusing on this. We're at the pointy end of things now, and let's really deliver an overall holistic municipal wastewater solution. So I'd just like to put that back to John and community, that's maybe where we should be putting our focus. And I'd hate to be taking Stephen off on other sort of ideas. Happy?
I'll do it on the weekend. No, that's all right.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just want to try and get us focused, if that's all right. John, would you be happy with that approach? Please? No? Okay.
Well, shall I talk? Yeah, it just seems to me that this has been an issue which I've raised quite a bit, and it wasn't just me, it was in Raglan naturally as well. And in fact, it well predates my getting involved in this. So, because the point seems to be, at least from my point of view, and presumably the point of view of other people who've raised it, is that it costs money to actually build a treatment plant that will deal with the volume of waste that you're getting, and the smaller the plant, the cheaper it is. Am I misunderstanding things? Or if you build a sewage plant for just me, is it as expensive as building one for the whole of Raglan plus all the water that leaks in?
The bigger the plant and the bigger you get, the more efficient it will get, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's also the quality issue in the environment of composting toilets and grey water, and public health issues. So mixed. So there's a whole raft of things which are probably philosophically different to having a municipal treatment plant accepting water from a at-scale wastewater network. Be it that there's some rainwater gets in there, we have to accept there's a percentage, and I think Richard's alluded to that. But I think we need to bring the focus back to what we're dealing with here. Composting toilets may be appropriate out in the boonies and out in the sticks, but if you're on a main supply, then very difficult to be thinking as it going to be as efficient for that. In terms of rainwater harvesting, the studies in Auckland showed that actually harvesting in the Waitaki area with tanks and all the rest of it, although it's morally right, actually is just so doesn't stack up from an economic value, because this scale of having massive dams and big catchments for water care and feeding that water through big pipes all the way down to small pipes is just so much more efficient. So reversing that, we are then looking at composting toilet than a wastewater network. So I'd just like us to really, really focus. We can keep on, again, spending time talking about these things, but I think let's just get to this municipal solution, John. But look, we can go and write papers if you want.
Well, I guess from my perspective, and I live on a septic tank. In fact, I've most of the places I've lived have been on septic tanks, and certainly my understanding is you need 2,500 square metre section by regional council standards in order to be to have that. Composting toilet, I guess, is a slightly different proposition than your own septic system. But what I can see is with sort of 5 through 800, maybe 1,000 square metre sections in Raglan. Yeah, I take your point, Ian. It would be quite difficult to imagine 4,000 composting toilets and everybody doing their own thing, and us having certainty from a public health perspective that we're doing the right thing by that community. If regional council rules actually permitted that, I doubt whether they would. But,
no, it's not prohibited. You could do one now, but you'd need a resource consent. So every composting toilet would need a resource consent. But again, it's just John, I get it, John. You're just thinking about the bigger picture of just lessening wastewater load. So, yep.
I've also just put in Hamilton Eco House, which is something I've mentioned before. And
yep, I've followed that up.
I understand why that's
that.
allowed, and yet you're saying no, it's not going to work. And
yep, the Eco House. I have got the HCC and the WRC emails that I sent through. It wasn't. They said it wasn't a trial, as in something that they've got LTP money to fund. It might have been just an example. And that was the grey water that was the utilisation. Again, I know I've just been blinking busy, and I should do it. We'll figure it out together next.
Because I've got more time than you, probably. So, if I can do something and you can point me in the right direction to find these things, and maybe sort of give the okay for whoever it is to tell me what's going on, then
yep, we'll do that. We check in all the time, John. We'll do that. We'll check in.
all right. Let me just have a quick little squiz here. John, was there anything else on that list other than coming back to the dates?
Yes. Angeline, as well as Tereki, involved in airfield ownership. That's absolutely correct. There's a partnership here with Hapu. So again, presenting it in a manner that this is the solution. There's still that component as well that we need to see if it is or it isn't, in terms of the area, in terms of what Hapu are thinking. If it becomes just not workable, if it just becomes not appropriate, then that's cool. At least we can put a full stop on it and think about something else in terms of that option.
Okay, thank you.
So I take it Wednesday.
What you're
sorry, John.
Hoping to get from a public meeting of some sort or public involvement, whether you're aiming to, because looking at that second slide that Stephen put up, basically it's you get what you pay for, and it depends what people want to pay for and what they want to get, essentially. So, if it's possible to get some indication of that from some sort of public meeting, survey, whatever, then that would be good to do. But I don't know how feasible it is to do that. And maybe it's worth considering using all the media, because I think Lisa, Axel and myself are well aware of what happened a week ago with all two of us turning up to a meeting. And, it really needs an awful lot of publicity, especially after yesterday's decision by council on the airfield. I think that's probably going to increase even more the cynicism that council's ever going to listen to anything. So as far as Raglan's concerned, so it's definitely an uphill job, and it probably makes your life rather more difficult.
So I would propose that we look for that 23rd of June, put together a very coordinated, multi kind of faceted communication approach to engage with people, maybe the video and all different media channels, to try to bring everybody in for that one-off, one-stop, big whiz-bang presentation and engagement, and try to get that steer. Yeah, don't forget that financial practicality is there, as you say, John, with regard to you pay for what you get, but there is, of course, the cultural and environmental aspects that we have to meet. We've got to meet those. We can't lose sight of that. I mean, if you just come down to dollars, yeah, you'd probably just go for the cheapest, which is give it a dose of treatment and put it out of a pipe out into the harbour. Let's be honest, but that's not acceptable. We know that nowadays. So we've got these, and the meeting tomorrow with regional council will start to force us down. Well, not force us, that's wrong. It will take us down a path of the limits that we need to play with. Then we've got the cultural aspect, and then we've got the fiscal envelope to play with. So it's very complex, but the work that's been done by Watercare, I think, is marvellous. You look at all the work that's been done to explore all the land, the aquifer recharge, and all those sort of ideas is pretty cool, I think. But we've done these meetings to engage with the community, thinking people will come. We actually probably need to push a bit more out there. So that's probably maybe my observation. I just think it's a shame that we haven't managed to get more people involved in it. So yeah, there we go. That's my view. That's probably maybe a summary. Axel, 23rd.
Indeed.
Let's crack on.
And Stephen, Richard, the 23rd of June, how does that sit with you in terms of project timeframes?
Yeah, I agreed with Ian totally. I think we need to catch up with Crystal, because there's been a lot of ideas about multimedia and how we do this communication, and we really do need to take our time and do it right. I think that there's some great ideas there which I wouldn't have thought of, but I don't think you can have it earlier and achieve those ideas. That's my view.
No.
Yep.
But if we want to hit July, we need to hit the June as the final kind of stop. We've got 7 or 8 weeks to do something. I'll give whatever time I need to help that along in terms of direction and work, presentations. Don't mind helping with videos. Yeah, very happy to be engaged. Let's move this on.
And the 23rd of June does give us, I'll come to you in a minute, Carol, does give us the opportunity, should we wish to have an early June engagement by Zoom in this usual forum, we could do so. Failing that, will be go straight to the in-person meeting.
Yeah.
Carol?
I was just going to say, just let everybody know too that Teresa, who's been doing the comms, is now on maternity leave, and that's why we've got Crystal helping us. Just to introduce Crystal, and Crystal used to work for council and was quite heavily involved when we had the annual plan change that had a lot to do with Raglan and the wastewater, etc. So Crystal's certainly got some experience in this space and with Raglan as well. So I just wanted to add that for those who haven't met Crystal before.
So I just assumed that everybody had, but anyway, that's my bad. I'm sorry, Crystal. Your reputation normally precedes you, but there we go. Yes, welcome to the team, because the next bit is actually comms is a huge part of the next part. So very welcome indeed. All right, well, let's wrap it up there for tonight. We've gone slightly over time, but actually not by any more than we delayed the start, so we're still about an hour or so. Any other final comments from anybody else? Hugh, Tony, anybody? Matthew?
Just, if I may, just being, and thanks for introducing me. I should have done it myself, actually. But being new to it, Lisa, at some stage I'd like to catch up with you as to the hapu who are closely involved and interested in this. I gather there are 3, and I'd just like to give, and I think you may have a handle on those, and so if you do, it'd be great to sort of catch up with you on that.
Thank you. Tony, anything?
No, I just want to say thanks for all the great work and that, and I agree, Ian. Of that, we just got to move forward and get it completed.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd appreciate that. Be good.
All right, well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks very much, everybody, for your attendance tonight. Appreciate it, and we can feel the I'm really looking forward to actually that next stage, and I just wish you well, Crystal and Carol in particular, as you work with Stephen and Richard to to make sure we've got a good turn up on the 23rd. So that's a good day to count down to. Thank you, everybody.
Good.
And, good night.
Good evening. Okay. Good
Night,
night.
everyone.
Good night.
Yes.
Good night.
And Carol, you can stop the